hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'll be your host, Brent Thomas, and Don will turn off his speaker.
I got it.
And this is our Wednesday edition of the Paranormal Portal, and of course, I'm not alone. Let me welcome my good friend and guest host, or co-host rather, Mr. Don Longbeard.
I like being a guest too.
You're a guest.
I'm a permanent fixture, I hope.
Hey, can you put us on air?
Oh, what do you mean on air? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
I don't know. We're not on air. Ding.
Oh, there we go.
We're on air, ladies and gentlemen. It's official now. The
We are
portal has
live.
launched. We are live. And as we move into this holiday season, one of my favorite parts of the holiday season has begun to manifest, and that is the form of num-nums.
Num-nums.
And these are graciously gifted to us by our wonderful dear friend and a longtime listener and supporter, Miss Julia. And she says, to the portal, I hope you enjoy my fudge. It's better than my sponge cake.
Which was pretty chewy.
Okay, I don't know. I didn't get
You
sponge
didn't
cake.
want none.
So I have nothing to say about sponge cake. But it says, love Julie and the family. And then a.k.a. Black Tree. That's Black Tree, of course, in the YouTube chat.
Yep.
It says, P.S. Let the fudge cook-off begin.
Nice.
It says, I win.
She is first to strike.
She has drawn first blood. And it says, wishing you all the joys of the season. Peanut butter fudge with a caramel top coat. Oh my God.
Goodness.
Oh, my God. And this will be hanging up in the background here somewhere in the next day or two. I'll have it up before the next show.
I got to tell you, she dropped that off with me last night, and it was so hard. I opened it, I popped it open. And I went,
Don has the willpower of a Jedi.
it was so hard not to eat.
Now it's in this really cool, little lunchbox
little
case.
lunchbox thing, yeah.
I thought this is the most awesome.
Points.
I'm going to be saving this because I love these little things, and I love to have places to put little things, and this is a great day, ladies and gentlemen. This is now, in order to be a good host, I should first offer
Brent,
Mr.
you're
Longbeard.
such a sweet guy.
Well, I wish I could take all kinds of credit for it, but
You know what?
I'm just sharing because
Haha, it's dense.
it's what?
Dense fudge is good.
Dense fudge. All right. Here goes. Taste test.
Oh, that's good caramel.
Holy sh... That was the mute swearing, but it's delicious. Awesome.
No, it is. I got some. I got to lick the table. There's caramel on the table, just underneath my computer. Let me slide it back.
That is awesome, Julia. Thank you so much.
Oh goodness, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
I love having a show.
I love having people that love to listen to us.
Well, that's even better, right? So.
And then they love to do these things. It's like, oh my goodness, am I not a fat guy already?
Oh yeah, but we're fat and happy, Don.
Danielle says, "Hey, not really fair, guys."
I only have so much fudge.
Oh my goodness.
And chances are I'm not going to be sharing much more of it. Don and I will be making our cuts, and 50-50, Don.
You know, I don't eat a whole lot of sugar, right?
Well, then more for me.
Well, no. It just means that the sugar I'm consuming now, I'll probably be wound up for the next 2 hours.
Well, that's good because we got a show to do. So
Hey, did I ever tell you about the time I had my first s'mores?
No, I don't believe I've heard about your first s'mores. Do I?
Well, yeah, it was hilarious.
Okay.
And,
do tell. We need more Don lore for the show.
So here's the funny thing. I never really had a s'more until I was like 39. It was just in the last 6 years.
Wow. Okay.
And I was over at my buddy's house, North Idaho. You know what we do at my buddy's house on a Friday night. Okay. Anyhow, so we're in his back. He went in his back field, and I'm riding his son's. We get the festivities begin.
Okay.
And he breaks out the makings, the s'more makings, and I'm like, I've never really had one. Yeah. And he's like, oh man, you got to have one. He cooks me up one. I crack into it. And I'm like, hey, give me another one of those. Okay. So I've had 2, right?
Nice. Okay.
And yes, Pixie, that's true. Anyhow, it's like, okay, 5 minutes later, I'm with the boys, his boys down there with their dirt bike in the back, the back field. I'm just right, just tearing around, and I hate motorcycles, I really do.
Okay.
So anyhow, one of the boys yells, "Hey, there's no brakes on that thing."
Oh my God.
I'm like, well, how the heck do I stop? Just use the front brakes. So I grab the front brakes, and guess what I do? Yeah. Right over it. Nice. One of the boys said it was like I did a Superman into the mud because there was mud everywhere.
Well, thank God.
Yeah. Dislocated my shoulder, and of course there was alcohol involved, of course.
Right.
And I jumped up, and I can hear from the other side of the field. He's got a big field. He's got like 2 or 3 acres of field. We're in the back. We're way back there, and I can hear his wife from the deck. Oh my God! I jump up, throw my arms in the air, and I realize I dislocated my shoulder. That did not stop it. The sugar rush continued for the rest of the night. Running around, it was horrible. It was just nasty, horrible.
The whole night, you didn't even bother with the whole doctor thing.
I know, because it popped back in. What's to go back? What's he going to do? Pop my shoulder in?
Yeah, generally.
Don't use your shoulder for a couple weeks now.
Right.
A couple months later, I'm still rolling over in bed. My shoulder's popping out. So I'm like, oh, well, there we go.
All right.
So, yeah, sugar and Dawn is not usually a good mixture, but I'm going to eat this melting piece of... It's so good, it's melting.
It's amazing. It's really, really good. Thank you, Julia.
Oh, goodness, Julia.
And this is her first fudge, I think, ever.
I don't know about that, but if it is, holy crap.
I know, right? Yeah, you nailed it. That's all I can tell you. You nailed it. It's fantastic. Wow. That's amazing. And thank you so much. And again, I'm going to put the card back on the wall there. So now tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we got a great show lined up.
We do.
And the gentleman joining us, of course, needs no introduction. He's been a longtime friend and supporter and guest of the show. Pretty much one of my first callers ever to the show, I think. I never had a caller before NeSe, and he was the first one to ever call in. And he'd been, a TFR audience person for ages. But he called in and shared his ghost story with me, and we've been fast friends ever since. But tonight, joining us on the portal on our Wednesday edition is Mr. NeSe. Kevin Shore is joining us to discuss with us his spiritual journey. So, are you there, brother?
I am here.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm sorry we can't share fudge with you, brother, but it's really epic for what it's worth. But but we're thrilled you're here, and thank you for coming on and being a part of the show. It's always cool, and your presence on the show has always been amazing. You bring a really unique vision, and your background, of course, is totally your own. I mean, you're one of those people that I don't think I know anybody else throughout the whole history of my life that's had a journey like yours.
No doubt.
But yet your spirit is so indomitable. I mean, you're just optimistic, and you're powerful in your own way, and it's really cool. So thanks for being here, man.
Well, thank you so much, and I have reveled in the glee of you gentlemen having your fudge and sharing it too.
Oh, so. No worries, brother. No worries. I'm going to get you...
Hey, NeSe, just so you know, everybody in the chat room saying hi. So tell everybody in the chat room hi.
Oh, absolutely. The chat of joy that I do have the opportunity now and then to be part of. And hello and hi, everybody. Hi, everybody.
Yeah, you've
everybody.
Always... There's an awful lot of enunciation going on.
There's an awful lot of hi going on.
A lot of stressing of that hi thing. But so tonight we're going to discuss your journey and your path and it's an incredible story. So where do you want to begin?
How about if I may digress and do it old school as I have been taught by my elders?
Oh, please.
So, Buju Anin NeSe Indigenikas Anishinabem Bwem Minawa Kevin Richard Shores Indigenikas Shaganashi Moog Makwanin Dundam Minawa Lindogit Chida Gawababi Gani Kagin Dunjiba Minawa Moorhead, Minnesota Nugumin De Chimigwich Gichimanadu Ape Gishbima Dizi Waywien. And thank you, gentlemen.
Oh, yeah.
So to translate that for you guys, it's a protocol that we have that when we meet each other, that we follow with our name, but not our name, but who we or what we prefer to be called. We rarely ever give out our full names because our full names is power. And just as the United States of Confucian in America utilizes our name in all capitals on all legal documents, thus they use our power. So when I said NeSe, that is just that's the first two syllables of my longer name that I was given to by an elder. And then after we give our name, then we share our clan. And I said Makwa, which is the Bear Clan.
Oh.
And this is from my mother, because the clans are distinguished from the mother. And there is 12 and 13 clans, ironically, those numbers you find throughout ancient civilizations, and of the Anishinaabe people. And so I said Gawababi Gani Kagin Dunshiba. That's meaning, this is a place where you dwell or you reside, which is translated to where the ground is white or the clay is white, which means the White Earth Reservation in northern Minnesota of the Minnesota Chippewa tribe. And Chippewa is the name that the United States gave us. The French called us Ojibwe, but in our language we call ourselves Anishinaabe. And then I said Nindogichida, which is a word, for lack of a better word, warrior. I like the word defender more so, because I'm not a fan of war.
Right.
But that's kind of a strong thing with the Native American indigenous people, especially the Anishinaabe people, that they have the highest numbers and ratio per race that have joined the armed forces. And they are one of the very few races in the United States that still honor their veterans in such a respectful manner. And I have been blessed and bestowed an eagle bone whistle by the veterans group, the reservations veterans group. They bestowed upon me an eagle bone whistle, which is a badge in itself. And then I said, of course, Moorhead, Minnesota is where I reside currently. And then I said thank you to the creator, Gichamanadu. It was one of the words that we use for the creator. And by the definition of that, Gichi means large, abundant, absolute, the biggest, the ultimate. Manadu means spirit, essence, energy, mystery, unknown. And so Gichamanadu, this is where commonly people think of the Native Americans talking about the Great Spirit. They worship the Great Spirit. And that's Rez talk there. And the Great Spirit, or the greatest mystery, or the greatest unknown. And then at the end I said, Ape Gishbima Deziwewian, which means I wish for you to have the Bimad Deziwewian, the good path, the red road, your path, that it may be what it is supposed to be.
Oh, cool. That's beautiful. I always love it when you do those openers. That's to me, it gives me chills every time, because the language. I mean, I think the language itself is just beautiful, but it's like the words have power. Is the best way I can describe it. Those words have power.
Oh, well, absolutely. If you think about it in just the regards of repetition, if a word is consistently said over and over again, every time that word is said, there is a vibration or a frequency that occurs within your brain. And that same vibration and frequency are really similar that's going on in my brain and Don's brain. Well, sometimes in Don's brain.
Touche.
When he's not on the fudge.
They ricochet around in there anyway.
They play tug of war.
Right. But so then that frequency happens, and the Anishinaabe language, Anishinaabe Mata, that's been around from my investigation and research over 70,000 years ago.
Wow. Good Lord.
And I come up with this number because in our language, we have words, and forgive me for not remembering them, for the woolly mammoth and the saber-toothed tiger, and the giant beaver.
Wow.
When a beaver was at a man's height.
Amazing.
Wow.
When you could look a beaver in the eye.
Jeez.
I don't think I'd want a beaver to look at me in the eye.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
And the words, in the way that you utilize the words, we have like prefixes and suffixes that mean in the past. But we're not using those words for saber-toothed tiger like it's of the past. We're using those words in like, hey, run, there's a saber-toothed tiger.
Oh, wow.
Jeez. That's amazing.
Excuse me.
That's really cool.
And going back a little bit, because we are time travelers, when I said bonjour, a lot of people say, oh, that's like the French with their bonjour. But it's not, because bonjour is a reference to Wenabushu or Nanabushu, which I believe are brothers of dichotomy, and they teach us lessons. And so when you meet someone and you say bonjour for the first time, it is in accordance to what are you here to teach me? Because Nanabushu and Wenabushu are here to teach us something, just as you have something to teach me. Everything has something to teach us, whether or not we take the moments to learn that teaching. And even a broken clock is right twice a day. So remember that no matter what you may not be able to tolerate in another person, they may still have something to teach you. And maybe that is more tolerance.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say, is usually those things that irritate us are the mirrors, and we need to look at that, because it's usually whatever we don't like in other people is usually a reflection of what we're seeing in ourselves, that it's really uncomfortable. And so when you move beyond those things, then those quirky things don't bother you anymore.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure.
So I utilize these teachings of the Anishinaabe because I was told this is what I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going up to the reservation as a little kid and seeing my grandma and just saying, "What's it like to be Indian?" And she's like, "I don't want to talk about that." You know. And so I went to go get Booksmart, but I'm jumping ahead of myself. And so in this existence that I'm living, I've survived, or I'm going into my 52nd winter. This is the start of my 52nd winter.
Okay.
And we're just about up upon the solstice coming up.
Right.
Yep.
And I was born in St. Paul, Minnesota, which I don't know. Were you born there, Brent, or were you down there in South Minnesota?
I was born in Hastings, so that would be south of St. Paul. Yep.
Know the dam very well.
I only lived there for 4 years of my life, and then we moved south from there down to the Red Wing area.
Oh, right. Have you ever been to Winona?
Oh, yeah, many times, yeah.
You ever go there where the eagles would feast in the winter along the river?
Well, I lived along the river north of Winona, just a little north of Lake City, and there was eagles nesting all around us. In fact, I got rolls and rolls, hundreds and hundreds of pictures of them being right outside of my window, eating fish and stuff. So, yeah, and I picked up eagle feathers all the time.
Yeah, to witness those birds hitting the water and snaking up fish is, you know.
Can I tell you a story? Do you mind?
Of course.
This is kind of a paranormal story in its own right. And ladies and gentlemen, I love to fish, and I used to fish all the time. And I was out fishing with my old drummer buddy that he and I would go out fishing. And we were out fishing and on the river, on the Mississippi River, and I was fishing for walleye. And I caught one, but it was really small, and I knew it was really small. And I was like, "Oh, Jude, it's got to be tiny." So I pulled it in, and unfortunately, I had hooked it. It really ate the hook, and it went way down in its throat. And I tried and tried and tried, and there was nothing I could do to get that hook out and save that little fish, because I certainly didn't want to take it at being so tiny. And so I was like, "Oh no!" But and then I turned to my friend. I got the hook out. And it was already dead in my hands. And I was like, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to throw this in the water, and an eagle is going to come down and grab it. You watch. And I threw it out into the water, just, maybe 15 feet from the boat. And it was about 10 seconds later, and all of a sudden, whoosh, came this big eagle, grabbed it, and flew away. And I was like, okay, I felt really happy, because that wasn't wasted. It became a gift, and something could use it, And so to me, that was a very spiritual experience.
But then the circle of life.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it really was. But it was like I knew that was going to happen, and I threw it out, and sure enough, boom, it happened. And he looked at me like I was something growing on his face. My drummer looked at me like I was something wrong. But I just knew it was going to be used. I knew it was going to be picked up and used.
Yeah, not wasted, yeah.
Right. It was really a very cool experience.
Well, there's a reason why we need those other animals, whether they be maggots or flies, or the only animals that I'm still not figuring out are wood ticks, mosquitoes, and vampires. Why do they exist?
Yeah, well, mosquitoes are really tough. I don't know. I don't have much use for those either, but they're here. I don't know.
They have to be some kind of evolution of each other.
Yeah, right.
I'm assuming here. However, in a lot of history, there is the cannibalism and drinking of blood.
Right.
So, you take it for what it's worth, and maybe into the second hour we'll get into that, our future of drinking blood.
Let's not.
But,
let's not get into that. Let's keep it a little more upbeat.
Yeah, I do hope that I am more wrong than right in most in most ponderings. So,
I hear you,
but
brother.
52 winters ago, and I have made the joke before that in reality, the last time I stopped counting my age was 6.3 million years ago.
Absolutely. Eternal spirits, brother.
But in this existence, this is my 52nd winter, born in St. Paul, Minnesota. I was born of British, of British and somewhat nobility, because we do have a family crest, and of Anishinaabe descent. My mother was, well, allegedly full-blooded, but because of the scientific invention of straightening out a paperclip, the mark scratched into my great-great-great-grandfather was darker than his skin, so he was not considered a full-blood anymore. And so they took that rating away from him. That was how they scientifically deduced
Seriously?
blood lineage. Yes.
Oh, my God.
From the Nelson and Dawes Act. They went to the reservation because they were giving all these Native Americans land. And it was against the law to purchase land from a full-blood. And so they're like, well, what do we do about this? Because all these full-bloods were taking the really good land on the reservation that they realized there was still really good mineral rights or whatever on the reservations. And so the Nelson and the Dawes Act, and forgive me for not knowing the dates of them, they're like, how do we change the blood quantums? How do we denote them from full-bloods to half-breeds?
Sure.
And they took a paper clip and straightened it out. And they would scratch you on the top of your hand. And if the scratch was redder than your skin, you were then a half-breed.
Wow.
Or whatever quantum they wanted to put you at, but no longer were you a full-blood.
Okay. That's really...
And that way they were able to either swindle you out of your land, because who knew the language?
Right.
And coerce you, or you would be in such of a debt with the agency store because your goods or your commodities did not come in. You would have to barter and get stuff on credit.
Oh, wow.
And then when the credit came due, then they'd be like, all right, we'll just sign over your land and we'll call it even.
Ooh.
Ouch.
Yeah. Pillsbury took a lot of land from the White Earth Reservation.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah,
so
a lot of tragedies in that whole realm.
Oh, absolutely. So, born of Native American, born of English, raised Lutheran, common and, old school, strict, my father, ex-military, ex-British, rule of thumb. Grandma made us go get a switch.
Yeah.
And if you didn't fulfill Grandma's need of the right size switch, she would march you back up to the willow tree and show you what a switch was.
Yeah. Ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But ironically, more times than not, the conversation with Grandma on the way up there to get the switch, I figured this as I grew up. When I explained to her that I learned my lesson, it wasn't that hard of a whooping.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yep.
But for the most part, we never got smacked, spanked for no good reason.
Right.
And the times that there were no good reasons, my father did have the integrity to apologize.
Nice.
Oh, well, that's cool.
So my father was a very fair man, and when he was wrong, he would admit it. So, but unfortunately, because of the upbringing of my mother, and my mother was literally born in a tar paper shack on the reservation.
Wow.
Where the walls were probably no more than an inch or two wide.
Oh. That's amazing.
And this is the reality of it.
Right.
And of course, my mother doesn't want me to share what her age is at all, you know. But because of this loss of heritage, because of this confusion of, am I Native American? Am I American? The challenges that just alone in America that we go through, we're not taught the best parenting skills.
Sure.
Or the best relationship skills.
Right.
And because of the movements and positionings of the universe and whatnot, my parents got divorced at a young age. And so I had to kind of grow up fast.
Right.
And I was rebellious. I was always considered a nonconformant. I did well in school, but I got bored too quick. And so I wouldn't do the homework, and I'd do really good on the test, but it wasn't good enough, you know, so it was always like C's and D's.
Right.
And it was always, if Mr. Shores would apply himself.
Yeah.
And so then I was supposed to go to college after high school, Kellogg High School, one of the 4 high schools I went to in my experience. And I was, what am I going to do? My girlfriend was going to go to St. Thomas because her father owned a construction company. And I saw an ad on TV that said, join the Navy and we'll pay for college.
Wow.
And my father was in the military. My brother was in the military. Relatives were in the military. The Native American teachings of, you know, the warrior society, the military, they always honored the military at all the functions.
Right.
And so I'm like, all right. However, I was the black sheep of the family. And where everybody else was Army, I joined the Navy.
Yeah.
And I realized right away what a poor decision that was, as you caught with my last name, and in San Diego.
Oh, yeah.
At the Naval Training Center when they go, Seaman Shores, as they're laughing at me.
I'm sorry.
And I'm like, what did I just do?
You poor guy.
God love you.
Right?
I'm so glad you turned out okay anyway.
Yeah. Well, by the end of the night, we can make that decision, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Judge me, please.
Carry on, sir.
So then, so I go to San Diego in the Navy because in high school, I wore a uniform every Thursday for NJROTC. And I did a week training in San Diego in high school of NJROTC. I was able to kind of jump a little bit forward in the Navy, and I went into a drill squad where they did the Armed Force shows and the band.
Yep.
And I was part of the crack rifle team.
Nice.
Where we were the guys that dressed up super cool with ascots and gloves and shiny silver helmets, and we would drag our rifles and spin them and toss them and throw them around.
Right.
And then I went to Radioman A School right there in San Diego, where I learned all about radio waves and wave propagation and transmitters and receivers and cryptology, where I had to get a clearance, you know, in order to handle cryptography.
Sure.
Because you would have to put the codes into the crypto machines that would decipher and cipher your transmissions. After A School, I started up Radioman C School, International Morse Code, where I had to learn da-da-dit, dit-dit, da-da-da, dit-dit. No, that's no SOS here.
No.
But that was the SOS there.
Oh, okay.
And so you're supposed to get, I think it was 36 or 38 words a minute. You know, this is where it's going like, yeah. It was so horrendous that one night in my cubicle, I jumped up in anxiety, and as I stood up, I said "da-da-dit" out loud. And the guy that was walking guard that night, he's like, Shores, And I'm like, I'm okay.
You started communicating in Morse code?
Yeah. And I have no idea what I was dreaming about. I just remember saying da da dit. And I remember saying it, but I don't remember having the control of it. It just came out of my mouth as I'm standing up. And I kind of chuckled with the guy.
Sure.
And yeah. So I didn't pass it. And I was all bummed out because I just got married.
Oh.
Because I thought I was in love,
Sure.
18 years old, you think you're in love.
Right.
And I was supposed to go to Yokosuka, Japan. And the girl that I was in love with from the PX, she was in the camera department. And I joined the military of want to be a photographer because that's how they coerced me in.
Right.
Bruce Lokensgaard. If you are listening, I am looking for you. But he was my recruiter that when I said, hey, I want to be a photographer, he's like, well, if you join as a radioman, we can get you in right away and you can start doing your time. And during boot camp, you can sign up to be a photographer. And during boot camp, I said, excuse me, I want to be a photographer. And they said, ha, ha, ha. Did you get it in writing? Ha, ha, ha. Right. You're a radio man.
Wow.
So I didn't finish Morse code school. And so then I go to San Diego Naval Training Center, or not Naval Training Center, but 32nd Street Naval Base.
Okay.
And I go to the USS Fox CG-33 guided missile cruiser, where I report for duty.
Wow. Oof.
I said duty. So,
it's like an episode of Beavis and Butthead here.
Right?
Yeah, duty. Yeah, duty. He said duty.
Right? So I go on this incredible ship of force. And the whole time while I'm in the military, I'm like, what am I doing here? I was called a nonconformant many times. I actually had to go up in front of the old man.
Oh boy!
Because of getting in trouble, and at one point they thought I was AWOL, when all that happened was my duty stat. I said it again, changed from 3 to 4, and so it just. Military was not my cup of tea.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I realized right away that I can say yes, sir, with a smile on my face, but it meant something totally different to me.
Kind of like what they mean in Georgia, right? Oh, that's so sweet.
All right. And so I could just say, yes, sir. I know this is my 5th time I'm shining this handrail, but I'll do it again. And, so this is the redundancy of the military. You just do what they tell you to do, and you can't ask questions about it.
Right.
So after failing Morse code school, I go to a ship where the joke is the captain does not like his wife at all, so he volunteers for everything.
Right.
Got to get out of the house.
And so I'm freshly married and going out and doing this, that, and Ready X's and learning to be a radio man and damage control, and in the military where you're hearing all of these old salts talk about your wife at home is cheating on you with your best friend and you're just spending your money back, and they're all pushing you to be just as much of a sailor and to go along and get along, and the hazing and becoming a shellback from a pollywog, going through these rituals of worshiping Neptune and Davy Jones.
Yeah, when you cross the equator in the Navy, it's a big deal.
Oh, wow.
Were you in, Donnie?
No. I stayed home and served at home.
Okay. So you know about the equator ceremony?
I do know some of it, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You guys want to hear about it?
Sure. Why not? That sounds interesting. Okay. Is it going to be safe for radio? Is it family friendly?
Depends on how he tells it.
Okay, make sure you tell the family friendly version.
Aren't we on the internet where everything goes?
Yeah.
No. What?
I'm sorry.
I have standards.
So,
Brent.
all of a sudden, we're going across the equator.
Uh-huh.
2 weeks before this date to occur, they put a big old tarp out on the flight deck, and all of the waste food gets dumped in this big old pile.
Okay.
The rumor is, in the middle of the night, old salts, which means people that have been in the military for a long time, would go and urinate and shat or puke or ejaculate into this pile of food rotting for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And so then on the morning of the equator crossing, we are roused, and it is more better to get along in this situation because of the hazing of it if you don't. And so you get up and forgive me, and maybe I should have locked my doors this evening. No, I don't know if you get in trouble for sharing this stuff. I'm sure it's out there if you researched it. But anyway, let's go. So they wake us up at sunrise, and you have to put on your uniform inside out and backwards.
Okay.
From the top layer to the undergarments.
Oh, all right.
And so you put them on inside out and backwards, and from the moment you get to the outer shell of the ship, you have to crawl. And prior to this, the old dogs are making these things called shillelaghs, which is a section of 2-inch or 3-inch fire hose that these guys go crazy about. They shellac them, they draw on them, they paint on them, they do intricate rope work, because in the Navy,
tie a lot of knots.
Know how to tie your knots. And so they would have these, they almost look like a cricket paddle. And so they would make these things, and from the minute you get out on the outer deck, you start getting berated.
Wow.
And humiliated and beaten on your backside with these shillelaghs.
Oh, geez.
They brought us to the front of the ship, and then they drop a line down into the water, cold water, and they're spraying you with ocean water as they're yelling at you and just insulting you to no end.
Wow.
They do this for a while, and they explain to you what your task is. So then you find yourself crawling outside on the stuff that's called non-skid, which is basically paint mixed with maybe class 3 rock, or no, is it get bigger, the number, or smaller?
I don't know.
I forgot. Okay. Like class 5 rock, class 3, but it's like a gritty. It's like putting sandpaper.
It cuts you up.
Oh.
Right. And so you're crawling on this stuff, and it is literally cutting up your jeans and your knees, and you're getting beaten with these shillelaghs. So you go to the flight deck, and they have this 3-foot air vent, or is it 2.5 feet? And it's an air vent about 40, maybe 25 yards. And it's in an S pattern. And you find out this is where about 6 inches of all of that rotten food is.
Oh.
And you find yourself crawling through this.
Yuck.
And as you're crawling through it, they would, at the front of it, they would periodically pause it. So you're just there in this, and just talking about this, I can smell it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's horrible.
And people are throwing up in this stuff, and they're still, we're like yelling at each other, like, keep going, don't stop,
Yeah, I'll bet.
So we would get through this, and then as soon as you get through this, all of a sudden you're facing the head of a boar. And a gentleman cracks an egg on the snout, and you have to wrap your lips around it and blow bubbles out the other nostril.
Oh, dear God.
And then yeah.
Okay. Well,
And then,
that's a riveting tale.
right. But it continues.
I'll bet it does, yeah.
Then you find yourself in front of baby Neptune, where they find the biggest, largest guy, and he's dressed up like a baby, and he puts a olive in his belly button, and you're told to grab it.
Oh, God.
And as you go for it with your mouth, he grabs your face and he smears it all over his belly, which has like mustard and vinegar and just more fun.
Yeah.
You know, and then we went to a toilet and had to fish out little bite-sized Snicker bars. All this while, you're being beaten and demeanored, and at any moment, they can send you back to the beginning.
Oh, hell no.
See why I never joined the Navy?
Yeah,
Right.
Boy.
I've heard about this.
And if you are a person that does not get along with people, and if you are a person that has a big mouth, this is an opportunity where people get back at you for having such activities.
Oh, man.
And it doesn't matter what rate you are, what grade you are. Doesn't matter if you're an officer or if you're the lowest seaman recruit.
Oh.
Even if you're an officer of 5 years and you've never crossed the equator, you're there doing this.
Wow.
And if you're a seaman recruit, you know, and you've been in for 5-6 years, you're shillaying or you're spanking an officer.
Wow.
So it doesn't matter. Right. And it's funny because we had some Marines on board, and those guys were crazy. They were like, "Thank you, sir. Can I have another?" You know, and it's just like, oh my God.
You know,
so
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that really speaks to Constitution, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and a lot of guys after something like that, they just said, screw it, I'm out of here. You know, they go AWOL at the first port they can. It's happened so many times.
Mm.
Oh, absolutely. And this was a time, you know, where arguments got fixed in the largest head or lavatory or bathroom.
Oh, sure.
And someone fell.
A lot.
You know?
Yeah, I'm sure they
and
fell
if
a
you
lot.
were really, really on somebody's number, sometimes you would be brought down into the engine rooms, and things would be settled. You know.
Wow.
You know, but I mean, you got to think about it too. We're conditioned. You know, we're broken in boot camp.
Yep.
We are absolutely broken. And that was right away. I realized that. I remember when we're walking guard, we're walking perimeter, and we're learning these general orders about protecting your fellow veteran. Okay, and yet, because someone may not be able to get it right, they're ordering a marching party on someone.
Wow.
You know, because he can't fold his clothes properly. He can't get his uniform, you know, because there's just some people that have that challenge.
Right.
You know, and his name was Koznitsky in ours. You know, and you're walking guard, you're standing guard, and you can't say anything because you may find yourself in what they call a blanket party.
Sure.
Where they'll take the corners of your blanket, tie it in a knot, and then come at you at night, and 4 guys will hold you down, and depending on what offense it is, it may just be as simple as a bar of soap and a sock, or a boot in your pillowcase.
Oh, geez.
And if you don't participate, then you may be the next person.
Wow.
You know, and it's this breaking you down and building you up to be of want of giving your life for your fellow man, because the machine needs the gears to move.
Right. Yeah.
And it's sad that they prey upon young 18-year-old boys that do not have the mental facilities to realize the obligation that they're about to go into. Right. However, I do like the idea of the Swiss, where everybody goes through the military and everybody is armed.
You know, and the Israelis have that same thing. You join the military for 2 years at the age of 16, and then you're in for 2 years, and then, you know, and the Swiss are the same way. You're right. You know, it really, you know, brings home the idea of, you know, protecting oneself, protecting your neighbor, protecting your country. You know, and it does add to, you know, that nationalist flavor. However, you know, there's a lot to be said for, you know, being aware of those kinds of things. You know, when I was in college, I wrote a paper. It was in a deviant psychology class that I took, and I wrote a paper, and I called it the psychology of the broken brotherhood, which is exactly what you're talking about. It's how we break down our people in the military, and so they can bond to each other. And that's the only person they care about the entire way through is their brother, you know, and that's why I call it the broken brotherhood. And it really is, because that's what they do. That bonds you to your brother. And it's really powerful, but there's so many things that can go wrong in that kind of thing. And you know, we bring home these, unfortunately, broken people that we've created. You know, and it's kind of sad, but, you know, like I said, it does speak to the constitution of the person that actually can live through it and become a better part of society. Because there was a lot of people that went into the military all through the ages, you know, because they were given no other choice, because they were the rejects of society. They were the bad boys. They were the, you know, the miscreants, you know, and you know, when
it was an opportunity for people that are in a challenging situation of upbringing, whether you want to call it the ghettos or the suburbs or the urban or the trailer parks, or just of low income. It was a way to get out of those situations. Right. And a lot of people, mainly minorities, do it. I mean, they intrigue people that get here legally, like immigrants that come here, like, join our military, and that'll get you a status.
Right.
You know, so you know, I'm in the military. I go along to get along. You know, you do the hazing. You know, the cool thing about the whole ceremony is that when you get to the very end, you know, after this whole time when you're going through this ceremony and they're asking you what you are, and you say, I'm a low-life pollywog. You're saying that the whole time, all day, you're calling yourself a low-life pollywog. And by sunset, they start stopping the festivities. Right. And then at the very end, they dunk you in this big tank. And they do it one at a time. And after they dunk you in the tank, they grab you by your hair and they pull you up and they go, what are you? And most of the time, everybody says, I'm a pollywog. And then they say, go back to the beginning. Oof. No. Because at that ending, at that dunking of the water, the cleansing, the rebirth.
The rebirth, yep.
Yeah. When they pull you out and they say, what are you? You're supposed to say, I'm a shellback. And because the guy in front of me was his second time going through, I had good ears. I heard him come out of the water and he yells out, I'm an effing shellback. And they all cheer. And so then when it was my turn, they dunked me in and they came up and I'm like, I'm a shellback. And they're like, yay. And I'm like, yay. Now let's see if I can shower this off. And then you would just throw your uniform away.
Yeah, that's
you know. And this was one of the other things too, as in the Navy, as a Native American, being taught a different ideology of respect to animals. And I've been guilty as being coerced as a bunch of little boys of torturing small critters. you know, and it's one of my saddest regrets and hopes of being forgiven for those times where that, you know, American boys will be boys, but Native boys, you don't find them, you know, torturing animals as much as you would American or city-born kids anyway. So while we're in the Navy, we would go to the back of the ship and we would throw our trash off the back of the ship. And one time I was going out to dump trash, and all of a sudden the whole ship does this boom, 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 like a speed bump, literally.
Wow.
And then an old guy, an old salt, you know, he goes, "Oh, probably hit a whale."
Oh.
And I was just like, "What?"
Yeah.
Huh. And he's like, "Yeah." And he saw that I had my garbage bag. He goes, "You'll find out when you dump trash." And so I go to the fantail, and you know, you're taught to cut your bag open. You take your knife out, cut your bag out, scuttlebutt it, and sure enough, back behind the ship, a good 100 yards, was a big, huge cloud of red ocean in the wake of the ship. And then I get back up to the radio shack, and they're sending out a message of our positioning and saying, "Yeah, we just hit a whale."
Oh, wow.
You know, so in the military, not liking it, just doing it because it's what I have to do. And then our ship, because of its efficiency, we received the Battle E Award of the West Coast for our class of ship. We were going to be put on a world cruise where we were going to go around the world in the Mediterranean and show off our ship and give tours of our ship. And so we just left Australia and we were heading towards the Mediterranean, and all of a sudden the USS Stark got hit by an Iraqi missile where over 30 sailors were killed. And we pulled into a little unknown island until the last 5 years called Diego Garcia, the footprint of the ocean. And we went there, and I can't confirm or deny what we brought on the ship. But interesting enough, when I was there, because I was a photographer and I had my own camera and I would develop my own film, they had a little dark room on base. And so I go into this dark room and I'm processing my film because I love taking pictures. And as I'm processing my film, another guy comes in there, and we're there for a week and a half. And so this guy comes in there as frequently as I am, and we're talking about this, that, and the other thing. And I ask him, what's his job? He's like, I can't tell you.
Wow.
And I looked him in the eye, and I'm like, nope, he can't. Because you know, when you see a man's eye, especially in the military, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. You know, and he asked me what my position was, and I said radioman. And he was like, clearance, and we gobbledygook about the whole clearance stuff, you know. And not that it, you know, need to know.
Right.
I had no need to know of what he did.
Sure.
But he did share a couple things with me that he comes to this island and hangs out for 3 months. And if he gets told what to do, he opens up a safe, and in that safe is what he's supposed to do.
Wow.
And that's it. That's all he told me.
Wow.
And I'm like, cool or not.
Depending on.
Cool or not cool, not sure, but okay.
Yeah, but my assumption, because I think I saw a glimpse of a tat he had, that he was a SEAL.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And that's my assumption.
Okay.
You know, and the physique, not that I'm a sailor, but the physique on this guy, he was ripped.
Oh, I'll bet, yeah.
he was absolutely ripped, and not ripped like, muscle head,
Right.
Like Arnold Schwarzenegger and
Just
bodybuilding, but ripped
like coiled
just,
steel. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
No, I know the type. I've worked with a few ex-SEALs through the years, and they they are all different people. They're a whole different breed, and they are just double tough. I mean, those guys are just double tough.
And Jesse Ventura is not a SEAL.
No, he's a frog man.
Yeah, he trained with the underwater demolition team.
Right.
And because the SEALs also go through underwater demolition at the same time,
right.
That's where he was mistaken as a SEAL, and then he never denied it. And then he was made an honorarium or an honorary SEAL, and now he wears the badge. Or I'm a. Sorry.
Actually, it was one of my coworkers that gave him that hat initially. The one that he's always wearing from his team. They all got together and gave him that. So, but I don't know that there was a SEAL. Was there SEALs back when he was in the Navy?
Oh, I'm sure there was.
Well, I thought that they came around more around the 70s.
Well, the name of Special Forces is constantly, you got to go back with like even the Navy. The Navy is the oldest military of the United States.
Right.
Okay. Sure, that makes sense.
And that's why the Marines are actually a subdivision of the Navy.
Yep.
Because Marines, Maritime, Marina, the Marines were the deckhands that were also taught how to swing aboard the ship that you would pull up next to and pillage. That was the Marines.
Okay.
So they were the ones on the ship that were taught to fight in case the ship was being attacked.
Right.
When your cannons and everything, and you would do side by side, and that's who the Marines were.
Okay.
And then eventually they became on the land, and started to pillage on the land.
Okay.
So that's why the Navy, if you really want to look in where dark forces are, is the Navy. And this goes way back because you think of Phoenician Naval Admiralty, Maritime Admiralty law. And if you go into the court system and how they're set up, they're based on this ancient law of the ocean and the law of the land. And it's rather interesting.
Yeah.
So in the Navy, the Stark gets hit by a missile, an Iraqi missile, and we get told to go there. And while in the military, they'll ask you throughout to go get they won't ask you. They'll tell you to go get a shot. Upon first arriving at boot camp, sometimes throughout your A school or your C school, or while you're on the ship. Mm-hmm. And I do recall before we went while we were in Diego Garcia, I believe, we did get shots. And we were told, we're going through the Straits of Hormuz, we're going into the Persian Gulf, there's a shitstorm coming. And that's where we find ourselves. And at this time, my son was just born back in California in the States.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't get to meet my son until he was 4.5, 5 months old, because I was on this world cruise and ended up in the Persian Gulf, where we're escorting ships back and forth through the Straits of Hormuz. And then we go through the Kuwaiti oil crisis, where we were supposedly there to liberate Kuwait.
Right.
But we were actually escorting oil tankers,
I believe that,
from a oil company that was owned by the Bush family and the Bin Laden family.
Oh, wow.
That got accused of slant drilling on the border of Kuwait into Iraq, which made Saddam upset, And Saddam said, you can't do that. And said, we're going to go home and invade you, Kuwait. And Saddam asked Bush, is that okay? And Bush said, yeah, it's okay. And it wasn't okay. And we said, we lied. And so we said, we're coming after you, Saddam. Gulf War I.
Right.
So Gulf War I, depleted uranium, millions of deaths, a lie to go there.
Yeah.
Gulf War illness.
Right.
All of a sudden, I'm sick in 91. I get out of the military, 230 pounds. I joined the military about 185, captain of the swim team, and in good shape, big boy, about 5'11". And I came out in about 90. I started feeling some weird things in my feet and joints. And then by 91, I go to the VA and I said, something's not right. And they're like, you're fine. Here's some Motrin. You know, it's like a low grade aspirin,
right,
maybe a little better. And then by 92, I'm like finding it hard to walk, excruciating pain. One morning I woke up and pins and needles were going through my feet, and I fell back into bed, and I went back to the VA, and they started running me through the gauntlet of tests, and they're not finding anything wrong with me, and they thought it was arthritis. And the one thing that I remembered is during boot camp, when I got shots, or when I received shots, a couple weeks after that, I started tripping while marching. And I had to go to the medic, and they ran tests on me, and I found out that I suffered a perineal paralysis, commonly called foot drop. And I didn't know it at the time, but this should have been a signal of vaccine reaction.
Yeah. Wow.
But I didn't think about it until after what's said and done. So in 94, a buddy of mine, I'm getting sicker and sicker. I lost 70 pounds.
Wow.
And having a harder time walking, had to get a crutch, had to give up my motorcycle. And my wife, me and my first wife, we separated because of the military and not having a good understanding of relationships and whatnot. We got separated after she bestowed upon me 2 beautiful children, my son and my daughter. And they went back to San Diego where my ex was from, and I was still in Minnesota, and my health is getting worse. And at the time, I'm a cosmetologist, and I met this gentleman named Horst Reckelbacher, who created Aveda, or some people call it Aveda.
Right.
And it was an organic hair product, beauty product, created by this Austrian man who was crazy like a fox, and sold it. At the end, he sold it to Estee Lauder for $3.2 billion, I believe.
Wow.
And I, perchance, happened to cross his path, and he took such a shine to me that he bestowed upon me a full scholarship to his cosmetology school.
Wow. Very cool.
And so I became a cosmetologist. It didn't hinder, and it definitely helped the fact that I was dating his makeup artist at the time.
That helps, yeah.
Nice.
And so I had a few times of sitting down and talking to him, and I had a few experiences of being on the other side of decadence. I was fortunate and repulsed at the same time, seeing what I saw on the reservation, where you go to a restaurant and the cheapest appetizer is like $25.
Wow.
You know, and to go in there with Horst and just watching him at the end of the night having like almost $1,000 tab, and just like watching him just like nothing
Yeah.
paying this, you know.
Right.
And then also because of this connection, I would go to these hair shows and get invited to these underground parties. And all of a sudden, not knowing then, but going to these underground parties and getting some creepy vibes and stuff and saying like, hey, we got to get out of here. And then now knowing what I know, there was times where I felt like I was in like some possible eyes wide shut stuff.
Oh,
wow.
And this is where we'll go into it more and more, where I find myself in these circumstances where it's like, next thing you know, I'm standing next to Robert Palmer at a nightclub, and he starts talking to me. And I'm like, who the heck's this guy with the accent? And it's not clicking until I notice everybody's looking at us, and I overheard someone say, or no, not Palmer, sorry, Robert Plant.
Oh,
my bad.
Sure.
My bad.
Okay.
So I hear somebody over my shoulder say, Robert, and before he even said Plant, I like staring at the guy's face, and I'm like, oh my God, this is Robert Plant.
Sure.
And, just little weird things like this throughout my life. And so at the same time, I'm trying to find out what's wrong with me. And I'm following the regiment of the VA. And, and then a friend of mine is like, hey, have you heard of Gulf War illness? And I'm like, of course I have, because I'm still at that time where I'm believing kind of the government and all of that.
Sure.
And he's like, well, Joyce Riley from the American Gulf War Veterans Association is going to be speaking in Wisconsin. I'll drive you if you want to go. So we go to see Joyce Riley. This is back in 1995 or 1994. And she describes the exact progression of me getting sick.
Wow.
And so I go up to her at the end of the lecture, and I introduce myself, and she asked me right away, were you in the Gulf War? And I'm like, no, I was in the Persian Gulf. And I explained a little bit of my story, and she tells me that more and more veterans are coming to her and have never been in the Persian Gulf, yet they're sick with the same symptoms.
Wow.
And ironically, in my situation, my brother, who was in the army in Saudi Arabia, 3 months after he got his vaccination shots, he was given a medical discharge because he got some weird arthritic-like condition. Because he was doing it where they had to take it practically every other day. They were getting series. Because he was over in Saudi Arabia and supposed to be going into Iraq and stuff. So then all of a sudden I'm like thinking vaccines. And so Joyce and I start up a relationship where she's sending me information and I'm calling her because I'm just one of those guys that couldn't take no for an answer. Or, while in church, I would ask questions and they would say, because you have to have faith, and I'm like, I get that.
Right.
But I want to do my investigation.
Right.
And so I start investigating, and I start learning of the atrocities of the government and veterans. And ironically, I may or may not have ingested some pizza toppings and went over to a friend of mine's house, and he's like, check out this video. And while I may or may not have been under the influences of psilocybus, we watched William Cooper's lecture of his transcript, Behold a Pale Horse.
Yep.
And it was the first time that he announced his information all compiled, and it what's the word? Have you ever seen those movies where the house, all of a sudden, all of the windows from sound just shatter out?
Right. Yep.
Right.
That's what happened to the calcified pineal gland inside my head.
Oh, geez.
It popped.
Excellent.
And it started bringing back memories and flashbacks of stuff that occurred to me when I was younger.
Oh.
As I start researching this stuff now from William Cooper and Joyce Riley, and it was what I call now synchronicities.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, as I start reflecting on my life, as I'm researching all of these things of the occultation, or the original term of occultation or occult is when the moon occults the sun, and so the light is hidden.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so as I start learning of this hidden truth that's there for any of us to find, and I just start literally, the anger, I think, attributed to the quickness of my dis-ease taking me.
Right.
And sometimes I also ponder if I have been cursed in a sense where entities of negativity or demons or evil, I mean, semantics on what you want to call it,
right,
where they have asked for me to join them,
mm-hmm.
and because of my refusal, my world spiraled downward. I absolutely believe that as an Anishinaabe and NeSe, that we have 4 parts of us, and I've shared this before with your audience. We have our physical, our mental, our emotional, and spiritual. And on all aspects of our entity, positive, neutral, and negativity are affecting us, whether they are being directed or misdirected. They are affecting us all. And just as there are people that wish you well, there are people, because of their circumstances, that may not wish you well. And this will have an adverse effect on your being.
Right.
And there was one time I felt that in the cosmetology aspect, going into that, where I was assisting a hairstylist that was making $80 a haircut.
Mm-hmm.
I was, kind of appalled because, like I said, seeing the reservation and the conditions on the reservation, it didn't resonate within me. And I kind of self-sabotaged that. And I think that was one point where I felt spiritually attacked. And I don't know, where, but there were people that, looking back at it now, in that salon, that I would question whether they were, for lack of better terms, witches or warlocks.
Oh, sure.
Because they're there in Minneapolis. There are Satanists in Minneapolis, and I know of some. And I've had incredible conversations with some of them, and I don't agree with their philosophy if it is anything to do with negativity.
Right.
Or trying to generate negativity, or trying to absorb the energy by creating negativity. That's just not what I prescribe to. And so I believe that these entities of negativity, they want the big fish. The big fish is those that are trying to generate the light within to help others shine their light within.
Absolutely.
Because they can find negative people everywhere. It's so easy to be negative.
That's the low-hanging fruit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And forgive me if my ego, but I wish to be a defender of the light or a perpetrator of the light. And forgive me for not knowing this throughout my existence. Right. It was not literally until I received my name that I realized my potential.
Exactly. And that's another thing I'd like to point out, though, is that in my journey and in my research and in my discovery of these paranormal topics and stuff, there's the one thing that keeps coming up is that people that are gifted, people that are resonating higher, people that are teachers, people that are trying to bring, like you said, light into the world.
Right.
They do act like magnets for these negative things, though. And you're right. That's the the ultimate conquest, I suppose, for any of these negative things is to take down, and I don't like the term personally, but it's one that I'll use just because it's understandable by pretty much everyone, but they want to take down the light workers, the people that are bringing light into the world. And why not? Because that would be like their counterpoint. If they want to bring negativity into the world and propagate the negativity, then they have to stop the light workers from doing the light work and bringing light into the world. So that's, I'm sure, why you were targeted as well, because I've known you for a long time now, and I've known you to be someone that really, you walk the walk. You truly believe in your message, and you have a gift, and you have a lot of gifts, actually. And, people resonate to you.
Yes.
They really do. And so it doesn't surprise me even a little bit that you've been targeted simply because, they want you not to do what you do.
Well, that is also a conclusion that I have pondered, reflecting on the experiences that I've gone through in this existence, and at one point in my past, I was the lead singer in a band. And there was an opportunity of getting into some cliques. Unfortunately, they were following the Seattle heroin stuff, and sure. I just not a fan of that stuff.
Right.
I can absolutely, from the mountaintops, claim my love of cannabis, which was my entire life since I was 12 years old.
He was an early adopter, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely. Actually, 48 miles away from where I am right now is the spot that 50 years ago today. No, not
50
today.
50 years ago. Cool. You'd be 2.
Oh, no. Sorry, my bad. 40.
You didn't start that early.
Oh, dang it. I didn't want to reveal that, but oh, well.
Who dipped his pacifier in?
Right.
Here's the shot of whiskey with that lemon. Or honey and lemon. Here, take this.
Right. Remember when they said Buddha, when he was born, he was able to walk, and every step he took, a flower grew? Yeah. That happened to me, but it was cannabis plants.
Johnny Hempseed.
Johnny Hempseed.
Cannabis.
Yeah.
But so there was this point when it felt like I turned my back on this group, and next thing you know, another pivotal point of where I was barely able to walk anymore. And this is when I had to utilize the wheelchair all the time. But also at the same time, the VA had me on so much medications. I was injecting myself with steroids, and it just was, it was horrific, you know. And finally one day I said, forget this, and I stopped taking the VA's medication, and I didn't tell them. I kept getting refills and everything, and I was utilizing the pain medication because that was a hard thing to deal with.
Right.
And so then 3 months go by, and I had to go every month. I had to go for a blood work, and the doctor's getting all excited, my rheumatologist. And on the 3rd month, she's all like, "Oh my God, this is so great. I think we're having positive success." And she had the last 3 months of blood work in front of me, you know, and she's like, "Isn't this great? Look at all things are improving." And I said, "Well, that is great news, but you're not going to be happy with me." And I shared with her that I stopped taking all the medications, and she got mad at me to the point of she accused me of faking it, and all I wanted was the pain meds. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. I'm faking it. That's why I'm asking you to give me a wheelchair, because I want to take it the full way, you know.
It's much more convincing in a wheelchair.
Yeah, you know, and so it was ridiculous. So I revamped my diet, and I actually went vegetarian. And when I did that, I noticed that my health was getting better. So as I'm kind of finding my health at a standstill, unfortunately, I'm still utilizing I couldn't cut hair anymore. And so I'm using a wheelchair. And because I'm at this I'm like poor at this point now, because I can't cut hair. I have no job. And so I had to go and apply for Social Security and try to get my 20% disability from the VA. So, you know, this is an arduous task that I go through, and I'm getting sick, and I had to put my concrete pony to rest, my motorcycle. And then the band kicks me out, and, you know, because I can't carry any equipment anymore, and I want to have a stool on stage because I can't, you know, walk up and down the stage. And I go up to this video store, Discount Video, on Hennepin in Minneapolis, and I roll in there because he has all the VHS tapes. And I roll in there, and the guy behind the counter, Bob, he goes, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." You know, because I had a little attitude, of course. And I said, "Military." And he's like, "Oh, yeah?" He goes, "Golf?" And I'm like, "Before that." And then I said, I think I got Gulf War illness. And he's like, "No shit?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
You mean no kidding?
Oh, sorry.
It's all right.
No shite. I'm sorry.
Right.
And so he's like, "I got something for you." Goes in the back, pulls out 4 VHS tapes, and he goes, "Check these out."
Okay.
And I said, "Okay." And so he gave me 4 VHS tape, and this was the introduction to my now over 1,000 VHS tapes, anywhere from 2 to 6 hours, with sometimes 1 to 3 or 4 conspiracy DVDs or documentaries on them. And it was a love relationship with Bob, because I would show up every Monday with a 6-pack of VHS and maybe or maybe not a couple rolled things. And
it's a good barter system, right?
Absolutely. And from that point on, you know, and plus being in touch with Joyce Riley, and Joyce Riley is giving me documents, and she's having me on her radio show And, you know, and all of a sudden a buddy of mine is like, hey, Jesse Ventura is going to be at the local bar and he's talking about Gulf War illness. You want to go? And I'm like, sure enough. We get there. I meet Jesse Ventura. I talk to Jesse Ventura for about 45 minutes after the whole thing's done. We share contacts. I start giving him information about Gulf War illness and stuff. And he's doing a couple radio shows. You know, and I'm listening to Art Bell. And I don't know, do you remember Ian Punnett?
I don't.
In Minnesota?
No.
He was with KSTP, and he was on 2 hours before Art Bell.
Okay.
And he was kind of the Minnesota Art Bell.
Oh, okay.
And he actually at one point stepped in for Art Bell for a short period of time.
Okay.
But he was a Jesuit scholar, which is neither here or there, unless you think it may be. So this is more examples of this whole synchronicity of meeting these people and stuff occurring. Jesse Ventura all of a sudden announces that he's running for governor after utilizing K-Fan for 2 years to get himself out there, becoming Brooklyn Park's mayor.
Yeah.
Ironically, my ex-wife was friends or acquaintances with Jesse Ventura's son.
Oh, boy.
Oh.
And so I get to learn of Jesse Ventura's son that was able to get away with all of these things because he was Jesse Ventura's son in Brooklyn Park.
Wow. Yeah.
And then Jesse Ventura becomes governor. As soon as he announces he's running for governor, I no longer have any ties to him. Yeah. I've tried calling in the radio stations and stuff where he was doing interviews and stuff like that. They wouldn't take my call.
Wow.
And then ironically, a friend is like, "Hey, Jesse Ventura is going to be speaking at the University of Minnesota. You want to go?" I'm like, "Of course."
I'll be there.
So we go there, and I push my way to the front of the stage, and I'm really disappointed because it's a Q&A, and Jesse wanted to go and thank all the college students because they're the ones that got him into office. And he gets there, and it's all those pre-writ questions.
Oh,
right.
And they're all softballs.
Sure.
You know, they're like, "Mr. Ventura, what do you think government is like with wrestling?" You know, stuff like that.
What's your favorite color?
Right?
Yeah.
And so then at the end of his thing, he goes, "Is that all the questions? I thought they'd be a lot harder." And then I'm like, okay, I'm a big mouth. And I yell out, "I have a question." And I'm right in the front there where all the reporters are. And they all turn towards me. And Jesse Ventura looks down and he recognizes who I am. And you see his jaws clench.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden somebody yells, "Ask the question." And then somebody else is like, "Ask the question." And they start yelling, "Ask the question." And so he comes to the front of the stage, and they hand me down a mic. And, or no, they were going to, but I just started yelling because I had really good projection. And I said, "Jesse Ventura, now that you're governor of Minnesota and you are an ex-military who swore an oath to the Constitution to protect the citizens," you know, I had a really good spiel going.
Sure.
"And what are you going to do for the 1,000 of veterans in Minnesota that are living and dying with Gulf War illness?" And then he's like, "Well, I don't know much about Gulf War illness." And then I yell back, "I brought you a packet." And then he's like, "Well, give it to my friends. And when I was in the military, there was Agent Orange, and you know." And then somebody yells, "Take the packet." And someone else starts yelling, "Take the packet."
Oh, nice.
And so then he reaches down and he takes the packet and he rolls it up like it's a newspaper while he's standing there.
Right.
And he's white knuckling the thing. And there was these guys on the side that my friend pointed out that looked like they wanted to kill me.
Oh.
Right on the wings there.
Sure.
And then at the end of it, all of a sudden I get swooped by a bunch of reporters.
Right.
And to no avail is it ever reported at all.
Wow.
So I'm going back to school now because I can't cut hair. I finally get my 20% disability and vocational rehabilitation. And so I go for my dream of being a lawyer because I wanted to be a Native American tribal law lawyer. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to get my associate's degree at the Minneapolis Community and Technical College. And because of my acquaintance with Joyce Riley, I asked her if she'll come up and give a lecture about Gulf War illness. This is in 1998. And so she comes up to Minneapolis. We do a 2.5-hour presentation or 2-hour presentation or something like that. And I email the entire Minnesota House, Senate, and legislation. Everybody. Wow. Email them. Still have the emails today and no response. We had 11 people show up to the presentation.
Wow.
One of the gentlemen that showed up at the presentation told us the prior day or a couple days ago, he caught a gentleman ripping down the flyers that we put up.
Right.
And he confronted him. And the guy wouldn't identify himself. And he kept saying that he was instructed to take them down because the guy was a vet and he was also going to the community college. And he noticed it because I put the flyers up almost 2 weeks prior to the event because she's driving from Texas to do this.
Wow.
And so we do the event and stuff. And then I meet this guy that comes to be a friend of mine a little bit, acquaintance at the community college. And he asks if he can come over some night. So he comes over with the briefcase and starts explaining to me, and this is another of those experiences of just weird synchronicities, that he was a clerk in the military. I want to say National Guards, but I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
And he said he was a clerk, and he was in the Persian Gulf, and because another clerk was killed, his number was called, and he found himself in a special unit, being a clerk of documenting stuff.
Okay.
And so he opens up this briefcase, and he starts producing maps, charts, pictures of Iraq, and he starts pointing out, these oil fires were set by our military. These points here are where buried bodies are of experimental weaponry being used.
Jeez.
This is where, and he's like sharing all of this stuff with me, pulls out pictures of a backyard party. And, and may I preface this, people, I will never, ever take my life or the life of any other entity. And although my health isn't the greatest, I do try to take care of myself. And if I ever go to the VA hospital and you don't hear from me in 24 hours, come and check that I'm not on a Thorazine drip in a padded room.
You'd be lucky if you were in a padded room.
Right, exactly. But anyway, so this guy pulls out this like a backyard barbecue party, and there's all these military people at this big, huge picnic table. He starts pointing out, this is Saddam Hussein's brother, this is the Italian general, this is the British Royal Air Force, this is some other guy. And I'm just like, how do you got these pictures?
Yeah.
And he's like, I took them.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. And by the end of the night, he like offers me a package of paper. He goes, "Would you hold these for me?"
Uh-oh.
And I'm like, "Sorry,
Yeah.
no."
Yeah, that's like a Scooby-Doo moment.
Yeah.
No.
Yep. And he started crying,
Oh, really?
and he says to me,
He's probably worried for his life.
"Yes, 2 weeks ago, he put his daughter to bed. Shortly after he walked out of her room, he was going down his hall. The daughter came out of the room screaming there were spiders coming down her window.
Oh.
He goes into the daughter's bedroom. Before he turns on the light, he looks out the window, and because of his experience, he saw men rappelling down lines in his backyard
Wow.
Oh, Jesus.
from silent helicopters.
Oh, Jesus.
He runs out of the room, shuts the hall light. As soon as the hall light goes out, gunfire starts going off around his house, all sides. They call the police. Nobody shows up for 2 hours. He is well armed, ex-military, and so he is running around the house, shooting out the windows, and just kind of, running back and forth, and just trying to shoot out to suppress fire, and just trying to keep someone at bay because he's for fear of his wife and daughter.
Yeah.
He opens up his mouth and he shows me his teeth, which are like falling apart and breaking apart. And he says his teeth are like crumbling.
Oh, dear God.
Opens up his shirt and shows me rashes on his body that he's having. And then he starts talking to me about the inoculations. He said, you're going somewhere with the inoculations. And I'm like, dude, I said, dude, I'm too scared.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm sorry, but this is more than I can swallow right now.
Right.
Because this is, I'm trying to find information about Gulf War illness. The only place I can find information about Gulf War illness is on the same shelves as secret societies, Bigfoot, UFOs, metaphysical stuff. And
most of it's cool.
Well,
yeah.
Well, it's that stuff that I hate the term sheeple.
Yeah.
It's the stuff that they poo-poo.
Right.
And because of my upbringing, my mother never poo-pooed seeing spirits.
Good.
Never poo-pooed supernatural ghost and stuff like that. And we'll go into that too, of those experiences. And, so it was just overwhelming for me.
Wow, I guess.
And I couldn't do it. And I was devastated that nobody showed up for this whole thing. And so finally I said, forget it. I'm just going to finish school and get it done, because I changed my thoughts because the Y2K was coming up and Hale-Bopp came by and this was starting to hit signals of my Native American ancestry.
Right.
And the Y2K thing was nervous because I was at a buddy's of my house, and he said, he goes, Kevin, tell them about Y2K. And I shared with his buddies the potential of what could happen if the whole reset of the calibration of the date on computers, if there wasn't some fix, even if it was a quick fix, there was the potential of computers going kaput.
The system shutting down, that was a huge thing, right?
But I also believe that it was a false flag to see what numbers of the populace will actually prepare in the event of a catastrophic
interesting
incident,
right?
So they know who's going to have and who's going to have not.
Oh, that's
what I believe now. However,
could be.
When I shared with these two gentlemen what could potentially happen, the guys were like, "That'd be awesome. We could kill whoever we want.
Oh, jeez, nice.
And this is when I'm using a wheelchair
Right.
for a lot of mobility.
Mm-hmm.
And from that statement, I said, I am in a city where there's over 1 million people in Minneapolis. Even though I have no fear of being in this city past 2 o'clock in the morning, which I was many times from going to open mics and,
Sure.
playing music and harmonica and stuff, I was fearful in the event if there was a shutdown of the system and those 1 million people no longer had.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I am a victim.
Right. Yeah, you're an easy target for sure.
And so I'm like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
And so then I focused on moving up to Moorhead, Minnesota, because it's the closest college town to the reservation.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, Moorhead, Minnesota in '97 had that horrific flood,
Right.
which I found out was a huge insurance grab and corporation grabbing family farms.
Oh.
But that's neither here nor there.
Okay.
But yeah, so I saw how the community gathered together, and I'm like, well, that's where I want to go if the event of something cataclysmic happens.
Sure.
Where a community has just shown they're able to band together and sandbag millions
Right.
to stop the city from flooding.
Mm-hmm.
And so I come up to Moorhead, Minnesota to go to the Minnesota State University, Moorhead, to get my teacher's degree, because I'm graduating with my Native American studies because I want to learn I'm a really book smart Injun too. And so I've read all of the majority of all of the books about the Anishinaabe people or the Ojibwe people or whatnot. And I wanted to go to the reservation and teach my heritage.
Sure.
Teach the history of my people,
Mm-hmm.
because I was so disheartened by the House of Legislation and the Senate and Minneapolis. The biggest thing that did it is I was at the multi-food towers struggling with this huge heavy door in my wheelchair, and I just get it open enough to where I can kind of move her around it and get through the door, and this woman came running up and cut it right in front of me into the door.
Oh, jeez.
While I struggled with this door for literally like 3-4 minutes, and this woman took the opportunity to cut past, and I'm just like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And she turns around and she's like, I'm late for work.
My universe is crumbling.
Yeah. And that was pretty much the pivotal thing. I told all my friends I'm leaving the city, and they're all like, you'll never leave, Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I'm gone. Right. And so I moved up to Moorhead, and then I get up to Moorhead, and 2000, I'm all stocked up, 50 pounds of wild rice, 30 pounds of bison. I have camp stoves and gas, and yeah, it was pretty funny.
Wow.
So we were ready in case Y2K happened.
Sure. Well,
but,
I think that's smart. As much as people say, oh, what about your ridiculous stuff? It's like, it really wouldn't take a lot for our societies to just fold in half. And if it did, a high 90 percentile of the population would be, just dragging their jaws off the floor trying to figure out what to do now. So it's like people think that being prepared is radical, but it's, in my opinion, it's responsible. I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. I don't, it's not akin to wearing a tinfoil hat. It's just like if things go sideways, as reliant as we are on the way things are, our ancestors could handle when things went sideways, but we are not prepared.
We're so disconnected from our food sources.
Yeah, we have.
Right?
People can't cultivate their own foods. We need drive-throughs and supermarkets and stuff. So if that resource goes by the wayside for some reason, there's going to be a lot of desperate people in a big hurry.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, so I get up to Moorhead, 2000 comes and goes. And then Joyce Riley comes up here and does a presentation. I don't know if you remember Ed Schultz.
Mm-hmm.
another one of those weird examples. Ed Schultz was a talk show here in Fargo across the river, and he started talking about Gulf War illness, and then I make another connection, and we're sharing things to where he wrote a book called Ed Schultz Straight from the Heartland, and I'm in his book.
Oh, cool. Good.
And so we do a town hall meeting, and we bring Joyce Riley up here, and Joyce Riley shares about Gulf War illness, and I find myself announcing I'm going to ride my wheelchair across the state of Minnesota for Gulf War illness awareness, and I'm like, what did you just say?
Wait, what am I doing?
Exactly. And so I prepared to do this ride, and on May 5th, 2000, where there's a harmonic conversion, roughly around 5 o'clock on the border of Minneapolis and St. Paul, I'm getting all the legalities done for my ride when a 80,000-pound garbage truck runs a red light and takes me out in the crosswalk.
Oh, jeez. Oh.
And so I find myself flattened and literally scraped off the street and hospitalized for a shattered hip and a shattered elbow. Wow. And yeah. Oh. And then things really start getting strange because people are making comments that they believe it was a hit. That they were trying to get me to shut up because I was talking about the anthrax vaccinations and that they were not safe. And I felt this was one of the causations of the first Gulf War illness, and I did not want those atrocities to occur again for more inoculations.
Right.
You know, because some of my evidence and research goes that possibly the vaccinations were part of a super soldier program where they were trying to manipulate us so that our immune system gets a boost. So in the event of a biological or chemical attack, we could survive a little bit longer. Because you find out as you go down these unveiling of these truths, you find out the atrocities of what they've done to the veterans throughout the past, what they've done to the Native Americans. And in all of these experiences and these quest of the truth, the one thing that I'm finding is the metaphysical aspect of our existence is being suppressed.
Sure. Yeah.
Whereas I am trying to be a better Anishinaabe, a better individual, a brighter light, that the powers that should not be do not want that to occur.
Right.
And it's comes down to the question of why. But then it also comes, why not you?
Right.
Right.
Why not you? Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've got a message. You're tenacious. You're articulate, and you have a real key drive to pursue that truth, and to make sure that that's shared and known. So I think you're the perfect choice, to be honest.
Well, one thing that I always pondered is, if the synchronicities of the occurrence of my existence brought me to this point of being blind, crippled up in a wheelchair, there's good reasoning for that, because as I uncovered the truth, the anger of not being told the truth was overwhelming.
Oh, I can't imagine. Yeah.
I would not be surprised that I may have been one of those people that they will utilize and when I say they, I mean the powers that should not be, that there are such things as Manchurian candidates. There is such a thing as MK Ultra mind control. Mm-hmm. There is, and this is my belief, and that's the only experience I can share from, in my existence, there are evil entities that are affecting, I believe, all of us.
We're trying to, yeah. Yep.
Exactly, or trying to. Mm-hmm. And if you want to doubt that, because when I start explaining to people about the atrocities of the veterans and what they, or the powers that should not be, are doing, and they're like, what? Because I would share like Gulf War illness, mm-hmm. you know, and they would say, well, the government would never do that to their, you know, and it's like, well, what about 9/11? You know, 9/11, they killed 3,000 people in a matter of hours, you know, but Gulf War illness, they're slowly killing over 1 million veterans that swore an oath to die for this that we're living in right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So if they don't care about the veterans, the powers that should not be, and then as you start researching the metaphysical aspect of our universe, and you start learning about magic, and you start learning about philosopher's stones or the sorcerer's stones, and you start learning about Falconelli and alchemy and the transmutation of lead into gold, whereas metaphorically, our spirit or our essence being lead and turning into gold, illuminating brighter. Well, no matter if that is the case or not, our entity is of value. Mm-hmm. So it is an energy. And so the powers that should not be want that energy. So why would not the witches or warlocks, mm-hmm. for semantics, be doing things to generate that fear, to generate that dis-ease, so they can gain that power from us or us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you know, I would like to clarify that witches and such doesn't imply that, you know, true witchcraft practitioners or Wiccans
right.
are not.
Oh, forgive me. Yes,
nefarious.
Absolutely. Sorry.
No,
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. Okay. and for semantics case, let's just, if we can just agree on evildoers.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
because that's where it actually comes down to. You know, there's, I always call it the Holy Trinity. Mm-hmm. Positive, neutral, and negative. Mm-hmm. And that's what we can be. We can be positive, neutral, or negative. We have that choice. Unfortunately, it's not that easy to make that choice, to be that action, because of the semantics of outer stimulation, peer pressure, evil entities, mm-hmm. and sometimes, and more times than not, our own egos.
Sure. Exactly.
You know what, Brent?
Yeah.
Sorry, NeSe, I got to cut in. I forgot. I do have to go.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I loaned somebody my truck.
Oh.
I forgot.
Yeah, that's going to be kind of important.
I love listening to NeSe so much that Brent asked me a moment ago, NeSe, if you got to go, and I said, no, I got nowhere to go. But then it just popped in my head, I don't have my truck tonight. So NeSe, I absolutely love listening to you. I absolutely love talking with you. But brother, I gotta go.
It is 9
Are
o'clock.
we already at our 2 hours?
We are. Yeah.
But please,
wow.
I mean, Brent's ready to keep going, so don't worry about that. It's all up to Brent at this time.
What do you want to do, Brent?
Well, let's go another half hour, and then we'll probably draw it up there.
Okay,
so
that's fine with me. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention to the time either.
No,
Donnie, I love you, brother. Be safe.
Thank you, bud.
I command you to be safe.
I certainly will. Yeah, it's icy out there. It's starting to really suck. But I do appreciate you being on with us. It's Wednesday. This is something we don't normally do. But for you, brother, anything.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
All
So,
right, Don.
good night to everybody. Sorry, Brent.
I'm gonna bump you off the camera then, and you can drag your connection with you, brother. Okay, so it's just us. We're back.
Right. Well, thanks again, Brent. And you want to? Can you plug yourself some?
Can I plug myself some?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Brent Thomas, host
Did
of
you
the
guys
Paranormal
like
Portal.
the video? Please like the video.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I hope you guys do like the video, and I hope you guys are enjoying our conversation. NeSe has been a longtime friend and guest and contributor to the show for a long time now. I mean, probably, like I said, I think you were one of my first call-ins ever on the portal. So you and I go way back, and I think we've had a wonderful friendship and relationship, and it's been an epic journey for sure.
And on my Megaphone Man YouTube page, I do have a playlist of, I believe I did find all of the paranormal times that I was on.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Okay. Yeah, that's excellent.
And I don't know if I shared that with you.
No. And why don't you let everybody know where your YouTube is?
But it's just the Megaphone Man, all one word, YouTube. I don't know if you put YouTube in first.
YouTube.com/the Megaphone Man. Sure. That sounds good.
Right. But yeah, you can find there, and there is a playlist there of all the times that Brent's bestowed the joy of our conversations.
That I've had a joyful conversation with you. I mean, it's always been great because I love your First Nations viewpoints. Those are amazing to me, and I think that I have a great and deep reverence for the cultures of the First Nations and how they live in balance and strive to find balance with the natural world. And I think that's we certainly all could take a lot from that, into our modern day, and it could certainly be transformative to our societies if we applied those same logics and reasonings in how we develop and live in our modern day.
Well, that was one of the experiences that I had when I got sick, and it's unfortunate that it's usually a time of when sickness hits us or dis-ease that we start pondering the big questions.
Yeah.
And when I started getting sick, I started pondering the existence of a creator or God, and I started looking into all of the religions around the world, because it's like I got out of being Christian because of the hypocrisy that I saw. I had a challenge with it. I couldn't participate because it just drove me crazy. But then I always felt there was some type of energy, higher power, or essence there.
Right.
And when I was searching, my girlfriend at the time asked me, well, what about your Native American upbringing? And so I started searching, and then when I started finding out all of this evidence of my ancestors, Michael Cremo and Forbidden Archaeology and Jeffrey Goodman in American Genesis and Leahy and all of these archaeologists that are like, look at all of these artifacts that the woodland natives used. And those were my people, the Anishinaabe people. And then as I start finding more and more about the rituals and the ceremonies, and you start witnessing magic. And I always believed in magic. I loved sleight of hand, but real magic with a J, where you witness the manipulation of fields that your American upbringing is sitting there going, I don't get it.
Do you know I have an artifact from the woodland Indians that I found as a child? Did I ever share that with you?
I don't recall, but I'm actually trying to sense it in the ether what it is, and I'm getting a hammer or a chisel thing.
It's a mallet head, yes, and it's like it's granite, and You can tell it's a mallet head, and you can tell it was well used. You can see where they carved out the slots in the granite for the lashings to lash it to a handle. And when I was just a young kid, probably 8 or 9 years old, I found it on my grandmother's beach, right on the Mississippi, on the shores of the Mississippi, where I grew up. And
does it kind of look like a bullet with groove?
Yeah, it's got like grooves going around the circumference, but it's almost squared off. It's not really a rounded mallet head. It's kind of almost squared. It's more rounded, rectangular. But then it kind of tapers to a what looks like it could have been a point on one end, but that's where it broke off. And that's where I think it probably was discarded, because it was used and broke off, and so it was broken, and so it was discarded, and it's sitting right here in the studio right now. As a matter of fact, it's not within reach, so I can't show it, but
nice.
I had it checked out from an archaeologist when I was an adult, and he said that it came from the Woodland Indians from about anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Well, if you look at, I think it's Vespucci, if I'm saying his name right, he was one of the earlier explorers of North America.
Okay.
And in his writings, he talks about visiting the giants. Now, the Anishinaabe people in Europe, the average height in Europe around the rediscovery of America was 5'2".
Right, very diminutive.
The Anishinaabe people, the average height was 6 feet, men and women.
Wow, okay.
And so you can imagine when these Europeans came over, how they're like, we can't fight these guys. They're super giving.
Yeah.
They're super giving, but they're huge. Mm-hmm. How do we fight against these guys? Mm-hmm. And you'll look upon the history, and you'll see the first thing that they did is that they immediately made deals and coerced families to let them intermingle with their daughters.
Oh. And
because of needing to kill all of the men, all of these short women are being born. And now if you look at the average height of Native American women is about 5'6".
Oh, okay.
But every now and then you will. Did you just hear that?
Did you need to get that?
Right. Sorry about that. That was my 11:11 alarm that says get to bed.
Oh.
So we were very large people, and this is where I think the stories of the giants came from.
Oh.
That they would come and see these. And the Anishinaabe, some of them claim that we're the descendants of Atlantis.
Oh.
And some of them say that we were brought from the stars. Mm-hmm. But the biggest thing, I want to be forgiven, because I want to kind of cut my history, because I really didn't want to babble on that much about me. Oh. I wanted to start talking about teachings that I've been given.
Sure.
And one thing that I've been told several times, or that I've shared also several times with you and your audience, is about paying attention to the cycles. Mm-hmm. That if you think of a circle being a cycle, at any point on that circle can be your starting point of your cycle, no matter what that cycle may be. Whether that cycle be a month, a year, a week, or the next time your favorite Showtime episode comes on. Whatever it is, when you recognize your cycles, then you have the ability to make changes to them. because nothing will disrupt a cycle like another cycle. So as we're going through our cycle of existence, we start getting bombarded by all these other cycles. Mm-hmm. Every 17th of the month, you got to pay that cable bill or that cell phone, or you got that job. You got, you can just, most people can come up with all of their cycles that they have.
Sure.
And I do believe that this is a tactic of the evildoers that are trying to keep us in a state of dis-ease by bombarding us with these cycles. Mm. Because if we get wrapped up in all of these other cycles instead of our own cycles, mm-hmm. of that division of ourself, that physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, we would notice, if we took the time to evaluate ourselves, that as a 24-hour cycle occurs, that there are times where we are at our highs and when we are at our lows. And when we recognize that, then we're able to change it. Is it because I didn't eat enough? Is it because I didn't get enough sleep? Mm-hmm. Is it because I'm stressing too much? On that daily cycle. But then we'll also notice, or we can notice when we pay attention, on the monthly cycle that, okay, around the new moon, I'm a little more agitated or irritable, or maybe around the full moon. Mm-hmm. And when we start doing that self-recognition, then we have the opportunity to make corrections of ourselves.
Very good.
And when we have that opportunity, that's when we say, okay, what action am I going to create? Positive, neutral, or negative? Mm-hmm. Because the universe is spectacular. The universe comprises of all of us.
Yes.
And it's easily, through science and microscopes, as we break everything down smaller and smaller and smaller, we find that commonality in everything. And then when we use that same metaphor of the microcosm, we see the same thing in the macrocosm. And it always makes me sad to have to recognize that we as silly entities do not remember the miracles we are.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? Yeah.
That when we just look in the mirror, our oogly googlies are sending and receiving an electromagnetic field called the visible light spectrum. Mm-hmm. And it's rebounding off of objects that are other fields and back into our eyes through our irises, the black hole sun, and then it goes into our brain and we extrapolate it into what we were conditioned that it was. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, we may be brushing our teeth or combing our hair, where other neurotransmitters and receivers are firing off signals to lift your arm, to raise your head, to gurgle and spit. And we forget about this.
Yeah.
The fact that our blood cells are racing through our arteries and veins at such a speed that if we at our size move that fast, we would die. yet our blood cells are moving that fast through our body.
Right. Yeah, it's
And
amazing.
we forget this.
Right. Yep. And we forget that we can also dream, and we can have, we touch the, this unseen world, and we have premonitions and intuitions, and we have so much more yet that we're not even aware of. People believe that they are just specks of dust on some little stone on the outer rim of a galaxy, and it's like, you are the heart of the sun, all of you. You guys are the heart of the universe, and you shine and you radiate and you're amazing, and you can create worlds. You could create universes of your own. I mean, we are the seeds of the universe, is the best way I can put it. But you're absolutely right. We just forget that, and we become a job. We become bills, and we become the mundane, and we get lost in our feelings of being persecuted and trodden upon, and we forget that we can create everything.
Right. Absolutely. And I believe when we remember how a magnet works, we are going to be literally reshaping existence. And the potential is there, the possibilities are there, but then it goes back to that, how do we collectively make it happen? Because sometimes a lot of us are so wrapped up in those stimuli, those other cycles, that we forget that we can actively together, like we were talking earlier, repeating that word. What if all of a sudden collectively we all came to agreement that by saying tutua meant the world's better, and we started at the same time saying tutua, and we kept chanting that for hours and hours, would that not in its logicalness create that reality that we wish?
Yeah. We have a question in the chat room, and this one is, would you please ask NeSe what he knows about 12/12/2018? And it's about the portal, ? Do you know anything about it?
Today is 12/12/2018. Isn't it the 12th today?
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly what she's asking. That is today, but it says the portal ? Would you ask?
Well,
NeSe?
we are about to come into the winter solstice.
Okay.
And I am absolutely floored and flabbergasted, because I literally, and Brent, you can attest to this, I take care of knowing when the sun rises and the sun sets.
Yes, you do.
And when the full moon is and the new moon. And in all of my researching, the winter solstice should not be occurring on the 21st of December. It should have occurred on the 5th through the 8th of December, according to when the fall equinox was.
Wow.
And somehow, if you, like, before we went on today, I looked up on the phone real quick to remember when the sunrise and the sunset was, and the morning sunrise is staying fairly consistent, where the sunset has been the main change of time, which is wrong. The way it is supposed to occur is equally from the sunrise and sunset. It gets shorter. And so this means that there is literally something that is having a magnetic effect on our Earth and is causing the tilt and the spin to happen at such a ratio that it's only causing the sunset to change. So that means the tilt and the spin are in a constant. And this is what occurs from the electromagnetic attraction of the moon.
Another gravitational body, yeah.
Yes, and all the other heavenly bodies. And this goes into the wormwood, blue kachina, which I bring up all the time, because I do believe that if you look in the southern hemisphere, if you look directly south and you go about 30 degrees west and about 40 degrees from your horizon up, that you will start seeing the blue kachina or the red dragon or Nibiru or Planet X or the seventh fire or whatever you want to call it. Wow. I do believe it's visible right now. And I do believe this is why in Antarctica they're creating telescopes and why the Vatican is creating telescopes. And telescopes are being put up at incredible speeds right now and over the last 10 years.
Wow. Yeah. They want to see something.
However,
they're looking for something.
However, if you think about it, if there was a celestial body that was coming back and potentially could come close to the earth, what a incredible opportunity of self-reflection we silly humans could have. However, it is the double-edged sword because of the potential of lawlessness. And in my research, the Brookings Institute said that in the event that they knew that the planet would potentially be hit by a devastating meteorite, that they would not tell us.
Sure. Well,
and that makes sense.
Sure it does. Yeah, it would be pandemonium. It would be, there'd be destruction all over the place. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it is very ironic that the military, in their exercises and stuff, one of their exercises is against the potential of a zombie apocalypse. That's a scenario now
Sure it is. Yep.
that they use.
And the CDC, yep.
Yeah. And it's that pondering again, why, but then also, why not you?
Right. There you go.
Jesus did it. Jesus, they told us that Jesus stepped up and said, hey, I want to be the light. I am the light. You can be the light. Let's all shine. So shine on, you crazy diamonds.
Yeah. Amen, brother. Now, we got about 5 minutes left. So you want to close with anything?
Well, we're coming up on the solstice. I'm about to start my solstice fast. And I do this because of the universe. And I do this to gain discipline on myself. And it's also a great opportunity to reset your immune system if you research fasting. But in this time of darkness, where they say put the Yule time log on, because the Yule time log burnt the longest through the night. And since we're coming upon the darkest night in the northern hemisphere, does that not seem to be the best time to be the brightest that you can be?
Oh, that's beautiful.
Because people have a hard time in this darkness, seasonal depression. And so you have the opportunity to be that. And even if it's just saving the universe one giggle at a time, you've done something better.
Yeah, that's beautiful, brother. Very true. And now, how can people stay in touch? Now she's saying, get the hell to bed. Why are you still up? Get out, get going.
Exactly.
How can people stay in touch with you, brother? And it's something that that I know you've been doing some streaming and stuff as well on your channel, and I think that's awesome. And I hope that you continue doing that because, I'm happy to have you on the portal whenever you want, but you got so much to share, and I hope that you're sharing everywhere that you can because your voice should be heard.
Well, actually, we've talked about that, and we've talked about having you help me make a bumper music, because I do enjoy babbling on, and in the vein of hoping that I'm helping somebody be a brighter star. And if you want to get a hold of me, you can either find me through the Cannabis Resolution or the Cannabis Res, REZ solution, or where I post a lot of my babbling on and babble-ons, and when I do get fortunate to be on TFR, the Megaphone Man and my YouTube page. And I'm looking into the live feeds. I'm going to maybe try to copy what you're doing, sir.
Good.
And maybe doing some live feeds.
Excellent. I hope that you do because, like I said, you've got a great message, and we'll certainly promote you here if you're going to start doing them regularly or you want to set a schedule. I'll be happy to share your schedule here on the portal because it's my pleasure to help support you and lift you up as well. You've helped lift up the portal after all for a long time, so it's the least I can do.
Do appreciate it, Brent, and you are my brother, and I love you.
I love you too, man.
I love the chat room, and I love as many as I can because I got plenty to spare. So if you need any, just drop me a line.
All right, brother. Well, thank you so much for being here, and thank all of you guys for being here. And Julia, thank you for the fudge. That was awesome. And I love you all very much. You guys take care of each other. Be kind, be good, be nice. Help each other out, and be the light, like NeSe is saying. Shine now. Now it's time to be bright and spread that light and love and try to shape the world a little bit with each moment. And I know it's going to get better. I just believe it, and I believe in you guys, and I hope that you continue to believe in me. So you guys have a great night. Go ahead, brother.
Ape Gish Bimadazi Waywin. Toodles.
All right. You guys take care. We love you all. And we'll be back tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow night for the Bedtime Stories from Beyond. So I will talk to you guys then. So have a great night.